Welcome, friends of the European spirit. Time and again, no pun intended, we can read in different places that the Greeks used to make a distinction between chronological time and kairological time, between the moment that one should seize, the Kairos, and chronological time, Chronos. So far, so vapid, to be frank. This doesn't say very much at all if you think about it. The question that you should ask is, what is Chronos and what is Kairos really? What are they? Why do we think of Kairos, for example, as an opportune moment, which again doesn't say very much, because if you think about it really, usually those accounts of these different quote-unquote understandings of time amount to not much more than saying, well, there's chronological time, but then there's this other time, the opportune moment, which, however, is still just considered, for the most part, it seems, a moment, a long, linear time. So how could we retrieve Chronos kai Kairos in a more originary manner to get back to our roots? Well, there is one wonderful book that I keep mentioning, The Origins of European Thought by Onions, published by Cambridge University Press. I would urge you to get a physical copy of the book as long as you still can. I think it's out of print. So try and get one wherever you get used books. It's definitely worth it. It's not too expensive. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to read to you some of the passages on Chronos and on Kairos, and then bring them together in a way that Onions perhaps doesn't here, but I'd like to bring them together to show you how Chronos and how really Kairos ultimately shatters Chronos and isn't just an opportune moment along linear chronological time, or somehow interrupting chronological time. It's a bit more. And why we even think of Kairos as opportune. So in his chapter on the beginnings of Greek quote-unquote philosophy, Onions says the following on the world egg and Chronos. So ultimately on the beginning of the cosmos, of the universe. So there's in the Orphic cosmogony, as he points out, that the world egg was begotten by a wind, and that it was engendered by a serpent which arose out of water and slime. The upper part of the egg became Uranos, and the lower part earth, including Tartaros in its nether depths. And we can perhaps also better understand at one and the same time why in this Orphic version the serpent was called Chronos, and why, when asked what Chronos was, Pythagoras answered that it was the psyche of the universe. So Chronos is the serpent that engenders the world egg. Chronos, as we shall see, is also related to Ananke. Again, Chronos, not so much chronological time, but is the serpent, again, that engenders the world egg. And the serpent itself arises out of water and slime. And in that sense, it is the psyche, the soul of the universe. Time, or Chronos rather, is the soul of the universe. According to Pherecydes, it was from the seed of Chronos that fire and air and water, so the fundamental elements, were produced, except for earth, which comes first. Again, fire, air, and water come out of Chronos. This conception of Chronos, the usual meaning of which is time, may be related to that of aeon, which was not only the procreative life fluid with which the psyche was identified, the spinal marrow believed to take the serpent form, but also came to mean lifetime, that's aion now, period of time, and so eternity. For Pindar, aeon meant not only the life fluid, but also a compelling destiny, a daimon controlling life. It is the name Heraclitus gave to the power controlling the changes of the world, aeon. And that is, for the Orphics, Chronos was mated to Ananke, to necessity, of which we also learn, of course, in Book 10 of Plato's Politeia. And perhaps I should remind everyone listening that if you'd like to read Plato's Politeia with some guidance, follow the link in the description of this video to my course on Plato's Politeia, otherwise known as The Republic, a rather terrible translation of the word Politeia. But such are the ways of American translators. For the Orphics, Chronos was mated to Ananke, again necessity, which also, according to the Pythagoreans, lies around the universe. So Chronos and Ananke together encircle the universe and engender the universe, Chronos being male, Ananke being female. There's necessity, in a sense, of course, to both of them. Below, a bit further down, as the audience points out here, it will appear, and we won't read this section, but still it will appear how for the earliest Greeks, time and fate were circles. So time and fate mated together are circles. Not so much chronological time, hence. The process of time was the movement of the circle around the earth. So what we call time is ultimately, these, let's say, sections of time, etc., distances in time, if you want to use a spatial analogy, or measurements of time, etc. That is the movement of, again, the circle around the earth, encircling the earth necessarily, inevitably. Without this encircling, in some sense, no earth. Well, we could perhaps, in a more modern way, say, what we perceive as time is this encircling of Chronos, of the earth, which necessitates change. As we know, Ananke is depicted often with holding a spindle. So we perceive as change. That is then what we call time. So let's now move on to this is page 150 following, to page 343 and following, where I'm going to read, it's quite a long chapter actually on Kairos, but it should really help us understand why we still think of Kairos as an opportune moment. It is clear, and he works here with Euripides and Pindar and also Homer, it is clear, Onion says, that Kairos meant something like mark target. This could not arise out of a sense of due measure or opportunity. So right at the beginning, if you listen closely, Onions points out that the meaning of opportune moment, opportunity, comes later. Initially, something like mark or target. On the other hand, mark, while it may explain the use approximating in significance to due measure, as in our wide of the mark, overshoot the mark, etc., will explain neither opportunity nor the use by which Euripides refers to a part of the body where a weapon can penetrate to the life within, above all within the head, as a Kairos. So Euripides refers, Kairos for Euripides is, for example, here the temples, where an arrow perhaps can enter and can take the life out of someone. That's the Kairos, again, where a weapon can penetrate. A weapon can penetrate. This description of the places where penetration was most easy, the Roman the Romans appear to have translated literally, if not very intelligently, by their word for what was the common meaning of Kairos in their day, tempus. I'm not going to go into why he thinks that it's unintelligent. I would invite you to read up on this. But if tempus means something being cut, then it is perhaps not entirely wrong, the way in which the Romans translated Kairos. And temple, of course, here, the head's temple, is where the error, for example, can enter. This use of Kairos instanced in Euripides appears to be older than the use commonly translated by opportunity or due measure. So again, just he repeats what he's already said. This comes first. For in the vicissitudes of Homer's epics, there are countless possibilities for the sense of due measure, opportune, etc., but neither Kairos nor any derivative is used thus. Homer's references to Kairos are confined to his use of Kyrios in 4 different contexts to describe a place in the body where a weapon could easily penetrate to the life within. This use must be related to the early use of the noun traced above to describe that at which a weapon was aimed in practice, but it does not refer to the target, point aimed at, or to the part in question as aimed at. It shows that the essential meaning of Kairos was not target, refuting a little bit what he said before, mark target. In Kairos rather described where a weapon might fatally penetrate and described that at which archers aimed in practice. And I see, I think this is wonderful writing by Onions. Today this would be referred to as unnecessarily repetitive, etc. But you can see him, as you read the book, working through these etymologies and trying to draw out from different sources what the original experience was of a certain what that went into, that sort of formed the word. The Kairos is, again, where a weapon might fatally penetrate. Now, you can already perhaps think for yourself how Chronos and Kairos and really hang together. Kairos is the opening, or the possibility of an opening, where a weapon can penetrate in a fatal manner. So, but what was the latter if we omit birds and beasts? And at what were the archers to aim in the great shooting contest for the hand of Penelope? At what was Odysseus in the habit of aiming on other occasions? At a penetrable opening, an aperture, passage through the iron of an axe, or rather of 12 axes set at intervals in a straight line. And to get past fortifications, armor, bones, etc., the early Greek archer practiced by aiming at an opening or a series of openings. Thus he must aim not only true, but with power, or his shaft, though entering, would not penetrate through. Kairos, as it appears, so again, it has to not just enter, but it has to enter with force, with power, so that the life falls of the victim, the animal, the beast, or of course the mortal enemy on the battlefield, that life is taken from it or him. Such a sense of Kairos will help to a better understanding of what Kairos really means. And Kairos, as part of the body through which weapons could penetrate to the life within again, will explain that Kairos, apparently, with a sense like parting and division, that's actually what it means in the beginning, a parting and a division. So it is only thanks to this parting and division that you can enter into a body with your weapon, with your arrow, for example. And in that sense, then it will explain the use of opportunity. Eis kairon, kata kairon, so we speak, as he points out here, of an opening in just this sense, and hence later on of due measure, etc. So The Kairos, thus, is what is right, the right aim, the right way. And I would say, just to add to this, that the opening, the parting in division, the fact that it's so the opportunity, opportune moment, due measure, etc., and also the opportunity, as we think of Kairos today, if we even think of it, comes much later. Instead, the Kairos is the opening, you could say, in Chronos, that allows, once you aim at it with power and force, to shoot through the apparent necessity and open up other realms from within. So in some sense, we could read into this, I would say, an early moment of human freedom awakening to itself. That the human being is not solely dependent upon the forces of nature, if you want to use this language, but instead that chirologically we can shoot through the necessity of Chronos and of Ananke by extension. So thank you very much for listening. Again, I'd highly encourage you to buy the book, and also, if you'd like, to join one of our courses at the Halcyon Academy. Link in the description of this video, and do share this video and like and subscribe and all the other things. Thank you very much indeed.